So this is my lesson on Warrior One. And if you're watching this, especially if you're new to yoga, I will assume you have watched the video on Warrior Two before this, because it's just a little bit of an easy posture, and there's certain things that are very similar between the postures. Warrior One, it's very similar to Warrior Two in the way that we start off, but instead of rotating the hips towards the side of the mat, we're rotating towards the front foot. And just that internal rotation of the back leg just makes it a posture that's a little bit more difficult to get used to. And a lot of times in yoga classes or online, you hear people talk about both in Warrior One and Warrior Two. The intention is to get the hips, like in Warrior Two, totally squared with the side of the mat, or in Warrior One, totally squared with the front of the mat. And the reality is that's just not going to happen for anyone. Even if you're a seasoned yogi, your hips are going to be moving in that direction, but they're not going to be completely square with either the side or the front of the mat, depending on which pose you're doing. So Jason Crandell, who's a wonderful yoga teacher that I've taken some teacher training classes with, talks about, he calls it Warrior 1.5. So it's moving in the direction of Warrior One, and it makes it a little bit easier. So you will need a chair, or you could need a chair for this. You actually won't necessarily need it. But again, it'll help you balance. So if you do have any issues with balance, just place a chair sort of right over towards the side of your mat. We're going to be working on the right foot first. So let's go ahead and find nice wide stance, same starting point as Warrior Two. And then go ahead and turn your right foot out to 90 degrees once again. And then you're going to want to turn your back foot to a 45-degree angle. Now, classic Warrior One, you want arch to arch alignment. But if you have issues with balance, it makes it a little bit easier if you step that back foot over to the side a little bit, because it just gives you a little bit more of a strong basis and brings your feet to sort of hip distance apart. So just play around with the balance there. So if you want to line up your arches, great. If that feels okay. If you want to bring your left foot out towards the side of the mat, that's great too. So 45-degree angle back leg. Once again, we're going to be bending into this front leg. And the same thing that I said with Warrior Two. You want to make sure that your knee does not track past the ankle. And the big issue with that, a lot of people ask why that is. And just standing in the posture, you're probably going to be okay. But just putting the knee past the ankle with a posture that takes a lot of strength, especially when you push back up out of the pose, it can injure your knee. It can put a lot of pressure on the knee, and it might not do it the first time you do the pose. But if you do the pose incorrectly over and over and over again, day in, day out, you can cause some issues with your knee joint. So make sure that the knee is always behind that ankle. And let's go ahead. So find your stride. I often find that Warrior One takes me longer to get comfortable in. And part of it, again, is just the rotation of this back leg, the rotation of the hips. Find your stride and put your hands on your hip crest again and turn towards that front foot. If you're really new to this pose, you might not even want to try to get your torso going straight forward. You can do, as Jason Crandell talks about, Warrior 1.5, where you're just turning towards the side here a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier to do. But so let's just, wherever you're comfortable, wherever you can find your stance, bending into that front leg, turning in the direction of turning your torso towards the front foot. Back leg is really nice and strong. So I really want you to try to send a lot of energy out through that back foot, and almost imagine that you're holding yourself up just with that back leg. So just make that really nice and strong. The more you do that, and also you want to spiral that back leg in. So if you think about just turning that left foot just a little bit inward as you're turning, that'll make it easier. So really strong in the back leg, spiraling towards the front. The turn really happens in the turn of this back leg. Go ahead and again, engage your abs, engage your core. Try to stand up really nice and tall. Most of us have a tendency to lean over this front leg. Engage the core, and if you're stable, if you're balanced, go ahead and bring your arms up overhead. So really stretching up through the fingertips and breathe. Just looking straight forward. Try to find a point of focus. Try to find your drishti that will help you balance. And as I said in the Warrior 2 video, these are difficult postures. If you're finding yourself in a place where you have to get out of this right now, that's fine. Just take a break, stop, but just see if you can feel the posture just a little bit. So maybe come out of it, straighten that leg, and come back in. So breathe. So again, the energy is really going out through that back foot. The back leg is very strong, actively spiraling that leg in, which helps you turn towards the front of the mat or towards the angle on the side, whichever way you're doing. And then go ahead and bring the arms down, straighten that leg, turn that foot in, and maybe just take a break, take a rest. So I know I'm talking, but I'm a little bit out of breath. I do Warrior 1 probably every day. It's just, it takes a lot of strength. It's a really great posture for that reason, but don't feel bad if these feel exhausting just the first few times you're doing it. And again, this will get easier the more you practice. So don't forget to breathe, as I'm not doing much of because I'm talking too much, but so let's bring the feet wide again. Turn that left foot out at an angle. And again, you either want heel to heel alignment for this pose, or bring that right foot over towards the side of the mat just to give yourself a little bit more balance. If you're using a chair, just put it out here at an angle in the front of you so you can do. If you're using a chair, I would recommend doing the Warrior 1.5 version where you're really not trying to turn all the way towards the front. So starting off, find your stance and rotating towards that front foot or towards the angle on this side that feels comfortable for you. So again, that back leg is really strong, just real strength through this back leg, through the back glute. And see if you can feel like you're spiraling that inner thigh in. So almost like you're turning that back foot. So the rotating the hips really happens all in the rotation of that back leg. And then really, again, double checking, make sure that your knee is not tracking past the ankle. Nice and tall here so you're not leaning forward. So see if you can bring your torso straight up and down. Engage the core. These are really, really strong postures. And then if you're stable, if you're comfortable, reaching your arms up overhead and find a point of focus and breathe. So bringing your hands back to your hips. Slowly straightening that front leg and turning that foot back in. Step your feet back together. So I really wanted to introduce you to Warrior 1 and Warrior 2 early on in Chapter 3 because they're really some of the best standing postures. And once you really learn how to do Warrior 1 and Warrior 2, it's easier to do more flow type sequences and just get moving a little bit and move to more advanced standing postures as well. I do not introduce Warrior 3 until later on, which is much more advanced. It's balancing on one leg and bringing the foot off the ground. So it takes a little bit longer to get used to. So if you're just learning yoga, Warrior 1 and Warrior 2 are the perfect place to start. And yeah, so I'll see you in the next class. Thank you.